I remember the Iron Curtain, not as a line on a map, but as an invisible cage built of fear, silence, and despair. It stretched across Europe, dividing families, crushing dreams, and turning entire nations into vast, lifeless prisons. We lived under it, breathed its heavy air, and carried its weight on our backs. Some accepted it, some fought against it, and some, too many, died trying to escape it. It wasn't just a line on a map or a political slogan. It was a wall that divided hearts, crushed dreams, and stole futures. Let me tell you what it was like to live under its weight. The Allies and the Soviets, once united against Hitler, turned on each other. The USSR carved out its empire in the east, and suddenly my homeland was no longer mine. It belonged to them. They called it a buffer zone, but to us, it felt like a prison. After the war, we were told that the West was the enemy, that capitalism was a corrupting force, and that we were safe behind the Soviet shield. But what kind of safety comes with barbed wire fences, landmines, and armed guards who shoot their own people for trying to leave? The propaganda machine worked day and night. Posters of Lenin and Stalin watched over us in schools, in workplaces, in the streets. We were taught that the party knew best, that to question was treason, and that those in the West were selfish, decadent, and doomed. But we knew they were lying. We saw glimpses of the West through forbidden radio stations like Radio Free Europe, where brave voices defied the Soviet blockade of information. We heard of supermarkets where shelves overflowed with food, of homes with televisions and washing machines, of people who could travel freely. And we knew that our paradise was nothing more than a cage. They told us communism was the future, an utopia where everyone was equal. But equality, I learned, meant everyone was equally poor, equally afraid. The state controlled everything, what we read, what we thought, even what we dreamed. I remember my father hiding a forbidden book under the floorboards, his hands trembling as he whispered, "They can't know." Freedom was a crime, and hope was dangerous. There was no freedom of speech, no freedom of movement, no freedom to dream. The state controlled what we read, what we watched, what we learned. Everything was monitored. The Stasi in East Germany had over 90,000 full-time officers and 189,000 informants. 1 in 6 East Germans was spying on their own neighbors, colleagues, and family members. A careless word at dinner, a joke made in the wrong company, could lead to a knock on the door in the middle of the night. I remember hearing about Pastor Oskar Brusewitz, a priest in East Germany who in 1976 set himself on fire in a desperate protest against the regime's oppression of religious freedom. His death was covered up, his message silenced. Life under the Iron Curtain was a constant ache. I couldn't visit my cousins in the West. The letters they sent were censored, their words blacked out until only fragments remained. My best friend disappeared one night, taken by the secret police for a joke he told at work. We never saw him again. Fear became a part of us, like the air we breathed. We lived in endless lines. We queued for bread, for milk, for meat that rarely came. I remember the rations, a few potatoes, a loaf of grey, tasteless bread, and if we were lucky, a bit of butter. Meat was a luxury, oranges and bananas a distant dream. In the 1950s, during the Soviet famine in Ukraine, people ate whatever they could find: tree bark, rats, even grass. In Romania, under Nicolae Ceausescu, food shortages became so severe that citizens resorted to stealing corn meant for livestock just to survive. Western aid organizations tried to help, but the government often rejected or intercepted shipments, fearing that foreign assistance would expose their failures. And yet, in the communist newspapers, we were told we lived in a worker's paradise. People fled when they could. I watched neighbors pack their lives into suitcases and vanish in the dark, risking everything to cross the border. Those who stayed grew older, wearier. The young left, and the old remained, their faces etched with resignation. Our towns felt hollow, like shells of what they once were. They jumped from windows near the Berlin Wall, ran across minefields in Hungary, or swam across icy rivers to Austria. Some made it, many didn't. One of the most heartbreaking stories was that of Peter Fechter, an 18-year-old boy who tried to escape East Berlin in 1962. He was shot by border guards and left to bleed out in no man's land as the world watched powerless. He screamed for help for nearly an hour before he died, his body left in the dirt as a warning to others. Even children were victims. In 1979, a desperate East German family built a homemade hot air balloon from scraps of fabric to escape into West Germany. Miraculously, they made it. But for every successful escape, there were hundreds of failed attempts, each ending in arrest, imprisonment, or death. While the West flourished, we stagnated. Factories were state-owned, wages were set by the government, and corruption bled through every level of society. There was no competition, no incentive to innovate. You worked because you had to, not because you had hope. The stores were empty, the shelves bare. We stood in line for hours just to buy bread. The state promised prosperity, but all I saw was decay. Factories churned out useless goods while the West thrived. I remember seeing a Western magazine once, a glossy picture of a supermarket, shelves overflowing with food. It felt like another world, one I would never know. But the black market thrived. Western jeans, American cigarettes, and rock music records were treasures, smuggled in at great risk. A pair of jeans could cost an entire month's salary. People whispered about secret underground markets where Western goods could be bought, but only if you knew the right people. And yet the party officials lived in luxury, their tables full while the people starved. Ceausescu and his wife, Elena, lived in lavish palaces while their citizens lived in freezing, dimly lit apartments, rationing food and electricity. We were always told that NATO was the enemy, that war was coming. We practiced drills in school, hiding under desks, as if that could protect us from nuclear fire. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 was the closest we came to destruction. We held our breath as the world stood on the brink of nuclear war, knowing that if it came, we would be the first to die. The Cold War was not cold for us. It was a daily, grinding fear that one day the sirens would sound, and there would be nothing left. And then, almost as suddenly as it had begun, the Iron Curtain cracked. In 1989, one by one, the communist regimes fell. The Berlin Wall collapsed, the borders opened, and at last, people tasted freedom. But for many it was too late. Generations had lived and died under oppression, their best years stolen by a system that crumbled under its own weight. Ceausescu was executed on live television, but no bullet could undo the years of suffering. The gulags emptied, but the ghosts remained. The Iron Curtain wasn't just a barrier, it was a weapon. It turned brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. I remember the tanks rolling into Prague in 1968, crushing the dreams of a generation. I remember the Berlin Wall, that monstrous scar dividing a city, dividing families. And I remember the lies, the endless propaganda that tried to convince us we were living in paradise. Today, the Iron Curtain is gone, but its memory lingers. I visit the museums now, the memorials to those who died trying to cross the wall. I see the young people free to travel, free to dream, and I wonder if they truly understand what it cost. The Iron Curtain wasn't just a political divide, it was a theft of lives, of futures, of hope. And though it's gone, its shadow still haunts me. It's hard to explain to someone who didn't live through it. The Iron Curtain wasn't just a wall, it was a wound, and some wounds never fully heal. The scars remain. The East has never fully caught up to the West. The memories of hunger, of fear, of whispered betrayals, these do not fade easily. I remember the Iron Curtain. I remember the hunger. I remember the silence. And I will never forget. Up to this moment, you may be thinking, who am I? I am all Berliners trapped behind the Iron Curtain. I am all Eastern European peoples who suffered under communist rule. Thank you for watching. For more insights into global politics, juicy secrets, personal stories, and military dynamics, Please like, subscribe, comment, share, and stay tuned. The video scripts in this channel are thoroughly researched and based on true but maybe not known events and trends. Any information presented is easily cross-checked by precise research by the viewer. Audio and video are AI generated. This channel is a one-man show. Again, please like, subscribe, comment, share, and stay tuned. Thank you.